From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicky.
Miss Vicky, we have a guest.
Mm-hmm.
We recently raced for our first time with AER, the American Endurance Racing Team series. And with that, we thought it was only appropriate to invite John Kolesa onto the podcast to celebrate the finalization of a plan and the amount of fun that we had racing with them.
Okay.
John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for having us. We went out there and had a good time. It was our first time with AER. We're at PittRace a couple weeks back, and it was a blast. We had a good time.
Yeah, I listened to your recap. Well, I don't think you had as good a time as you could. I think you did a little bit of driving and fixing. We always hate to see that when it's a race weekend. I want to see people on the racetrack. So anytime you're not on the racetrack, I'm disappointed.
Best laid plans, right?
Yep.
It all good until somebody punches you in the face. But we got punched in the face a little bit, but we did okay. It was fine. So John, just in case people aren't familiar with you, could you kind of give a little brief introduction to yourself? Could be family life, could be professional life, could be racing life, whatever you feel like get into.
I'll just talk about racing stuff. So I did a bunch of amateur racing years ago, and I stopped doing it, for various reasons, family and all sorts of stuff. And I don't know, 12 years ago-ish, a friend and I heard about the 24 Hours of Lemons races, and we knew some people who were building a car to do it. And so we built a car, we built an E30, and we did some Lemons races, maybe a dozen Lemons races in the early, I forget what year it would have been, 2012, 2011, something like that. We did a bunch of Lemons races. We won one, but then we thought that Lemons really wasn't for us, and we tried what was Chump Car at the time, and that really wasn't for us either. And really what we wanted was a series that is what AER is. We wanted an endurance racing series where builds were less restrictive, that would be open to a lot of race cars that weren't currently being raced. We thought there was a lot of race cars out there that would fit, and nobody was really doing that. So, I was at the point where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I guess what I wanted to do was start a racing series. So me and a friend and a couple others started AER, and we held our first events in 2014.
So would you do it again if you knew what you knew now?
That's hard to say. It's hard to say. I don't know. Probably I might have done things differently, but overall it's done well. So I guess.
Yeah, it always the details always seem to be a lot deeper than what we have as the plan going in. So
yeah, for sure. Unless you've started a race series from scratch before, it's hard to figure out. It's hard to really know what it's going to be.
Yeah, we keep trying to figure out how tracks work. We haven't gotten that track to agree to come on yet, but we're going to soon. Mm-hmm. Because that's a side we never even think about.
Yeah, it's a funny thing about starting a race series is how do you know how to do any of these things? Unless you've done it before. Rent racetracks and insurance and timing and scoring and all these things, you kind of have to fake it till you make it and figure it out.
I get that. So we're gonna try to get into the AER stuff, and then we've got a couple of questions we may come back to at the end. But traditional listeners may be thrown askew by what we're trying to do here. But so AER, American Endurance Racing, besides having some of the best swag we've seen, kind of we got a little bit into how you pre-started it, but the reasons that you were starting it was you were trying to satisfy something that you weren't getting, and kind of what was or were those things?
Yeah, I mean, we really liked endurance racing. We liked the team effort and sharing things and the amount of seat time to get in endurance racing and the sharing responsibilities with cars and all that stuff like that. But we wanted, I guess what we thought was more serious racing, a higher quality of racing, and the ability to kind of build the cars we wanted to build, less restrictive build rules. We didn't want to be hampered by putting parts on cars that increase longevity or, parts that aren't really performance related, but, anyways, we became frustrated with what we were doing. So, we wanted to have a more open build rule.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we
And
thought, I'm sorry to interrupt. And we thought that there was a lot of cars out there that weren't being used. There was, a ton of E36s that were originally built to race and never got raced. And there was Miatas and E30s and a lot of cars that were built and were sitting around. And we thought that could be a good place for those cars if we made something that was open and inviting to them.
Mm-hmm. Less prescriptive, I guess, and less, I don't know, some of the series, it's kind of like, if you change this, then we will penalize you. And it's like,
right.
but it doesn't help me.
Exactly. Yeah. Like being penalized for putting a new alternator on the car. I'm like,
yeah, it's
just going to make it so the car runs all weekend, which is what we want to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the part of this whole thing. It's always funny when people start classing our cars. Sometimes they're like, this is an A-class car all the time. I said, yeah, but we're driving it.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and that maybe I'll jump ahead. That maybe goes to the way we class cars because,
mm-hmm.
there can be so much variation in drivers and cars. It's trying to class them based on the car's potential performance. A lot of times is not accurate, and it can be really frustrating for teams
mm-hmm.
unless you're all 10/10 pro drivers. It can be really frustrating. So we wanted to figure out a way to class cars so that good drivers, relatively fast drivers, could be competitive. So we do that based on qualifying times, but we also do a lot of lap time analysis during the race to make sure that the car is competitive with the group they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Cars that race with us all the time, we know how fast the drivers are and where they go, but new teams, it's a challenge, but like I said, we have a lot of ways to look at teams' lap times and try to figure out, what their performance is. And so we do things based on the car's actual performance.
Right. And the classes were quite narrowly, I don't know if spaced is the right word, but everybody in our class, at least the one that we paid attention to and we either did well or did poorly, depending on the day. The variability within that class was quite tight.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear, because that means we did our job right. I mean, we want people to feel like if they don't screw up, they have a chance to be on the podium. If they not on the podium, it's because they screwed up. It wasn't because, there were cars in their class that were just blowing them away.
Yeah.
So are there any limits to cars that have to come in, or is it just open?
We do cap cars. We have our top class is not performance based. It's a power to weight class. So if cars are outside of that, we're not going to turn them away, but we're going to class them in a kind of by themselves. They're not going to be scored. So technically there really isn't a cap, but there is, because, like I said, if they're beyond a certain performance power to weight window, they're not going to have anybody to race against.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a shakedown class or a non-points getting. I don't know if the proper term
exhibition class.
Non-points getting.
Non-points getter.
An exhibition class.
You get no points. You get no trophies.
Yep.
The dancing girls will ignore you at the ceremony. Anyway, Miss Vicky.
Yeah. So how does it work? The classes and classing just in general.
So we have, all our races, all our events are 3-day events. Friday morning is practice, and it's for drivers who are registered to race, can go out on track in their race cars or their backup race cars or street cars or track cars, or et cetera. It's open track for people to get plenty of practice on the racetrack. And then Friday afternoons are qualifying, where we require every car that's racing to turn hot laps. Every driver, we want to turn at least 5 hot laps. So we're looking for cars to set times that are representative of what the cars can do in a race. And then we have a bunch of ways to sort those based on lap times, based on the fastest lap of the fastest driver, the fastest lap of the second driver, and we try to put them into groupings that seem to make sense. So that's how we class cars. And then during the race, we run a analysis on everybody's lap times every hour. And we have in the back end of our system, we have a page that gets generated that sorts all the cars by about, I forget, 10 or 12 different ways. And they're all color coded by class. And it's kind of makes cars that don't fit in their class pop out. Like we'll look for not just the fastest lap by the fastest driver, but we'll look at the fastest lap by the second fastest driver, or the average, top 5 laps by all the drivers. And we look for ways that, will show if a car really belongs with the cars that it's racing with or doesn't belong. So, we look at it, and occasionally, we use that to move somebody during the race, or we move them more often than not overnight. If it doesn't seem like they were in the right class one day, we'll move them for the next day. We don't do that very often, but occasionally, particularly with a car that's new, we don't know the drivers, we don't know the car, they're learning the track, et cetera, their performance changes. So sometimes that happens.
Do you happen to get any sandbaggers? And how do you deal with them?
No, not really. If somebody wanted to drive a car slow and win a slower class, there's probably nothing to stop them from doing that. But I don't really think that we don't really see that racers want to do that. Racers want to race. If they start turning fast laps, it becomes obvious how fast the car is. I'm really skeptical of the idea that you could get 4 or 5 drivers to drive at 9/10 for 8 hours so they could win a trophy against some slower cars. So I don't think that's really something that happens.
Go ahead, Bill.
So when we were at the PittRace event, we noticed that at least for that event, it was no hot poles and everything was full course yellow with a pace car. Is that kind of the AER standard, or was that a agreement between you and PittRace, or how do you usually handle those?
So do you want me to talk about what hot poles are and describe that?
Yeah, you probably should, because we didn't do a great job of it the last time we talked about it.
Okay. So if a racetrack needs to send emergency vehicles, a wrecker or a tow truck or an ambulance or something on the racetrack, they used to cover it by throwing a local yellows and then covering the moving cars with white flags. And then they would pull the car when the track was hot. They would send out a wrecker and they would tow cars in while the track was still hot, and they would just cover it with a local yellow or with white flags. More and more racetracks are more and more reluctant to do that anymore. There was an incident a couple of years ago with another series that I'm not going to name at a famous racetrack where they were doing that. And a race car didn't slow down, didn't obey white flags, and crashed into a tow truck. And that track does not do hot poles anymore. And there's a bunch of tracks that are just moving away from it. Watkins Glen does not do hot poles anymore. New Jersey Motorsports Park does not. The exception is the Lemons races.
Yes,
I've been told that they do it for the Lemons races because the speeds are so low.
Yeah. And it would just be a yellow flag weekend if you didn't.
Yeah. So anyway, so tracks are moving away from that. VIR, I don't think does hot poles anymore. So the option, if you're not doing a hot pole, there's 2 options. VIR and New Jersey Motorsports Park offer this code 35, where if they need to roll the EV onto the racetrack, they will throw these code 35 flags, which means everybody's supposed to slow down to 35 miles an hour and just maintain the gap between cars. It sounds good, but I don't think it works. Racers catch up to each other, and you end up with one car going 35 and everybody behind them. Right. So instead of doing that, when we have to go double yellow, we roll a safety car and we pick up the field and we bunch everybody behind the safety car. So, I mean, that's, the decisions to do all those things come from the track. They come from track's race control, what they think is safe to do. If they think it's safe to send a tow truck out on the racetrack to pick up a car, that's fine. It's always our preference, but it's up to them what they feel safe doing. But like I said, some tracks just don't do it anymore.
So how are you dealing with the pit stops, especially when it comes to fueling with the drivers in the car?
Yeah.
Um,
So, well,
yeah,
so
that's
when we,
different than what we do.
yeah, so when we started doing this, there was a couple things that we wanted to address. There's a couple advantages we thought that people could buy. One was through fueling a car quickly, and the other was through having a huge fuel cell in the car. And we didn't want people to be able to buy those advantages. So regarding fueling the car quickly, we mandated all the stops have to be 3 minutes from pit in to pit out. They're 3-minute stops. And then we mandate the number of stops they have to make. They have to, in a 9-hour or an 8-hour race, they have to make 5 stops. So it takes away the advantage of a huge fuel cell. If you can go 84 minutes or something like that, you can be competitive. And then if you can, most people can do a 3-minute stop with regular fuel jugs. They don't need fancy fuel rigs. So it removes the advantage of a fuel system. And then regarding pit stuff, those are just safety things. We think it's relatively safe to change a driver while we're fueling, but we didn't want people working on the car because that could snowball into them doing all sorts of things around where fueling is going on. But we do a lot of driver changes, but just not any other work while fueling is going on.
So you also bring in, you have a required number per race and a required minimum stop time. Now, stop time is new.
Does that vary from race to race, or does it
No,
always 3 minutes?
it's been 3 minutes from the very beginning. It's always been 3 minutes. We found it works really well. Like I said, teams that are organized can do that without rushing, and teams that aren't organized go over and they get a little bit of a time penalty. But we didn't want. There are teams that want to try to win the race in the pits, and we thought that wasn't a safe precedent in amateur racing to promote.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah, so it's a way to control, what the variables are. So it's a nice way to do it, because I know Lucky Dog does it. I think theirs is 5 minutes. It's whatever the timer is that's on top of the car. I don't remember.
Yeah, Champ Car and Luck. I know Champ Car used to be 5. I guess it still is, and Lucky Dog may be the same. And I was going to speak kind of along those lines. So, at the very beginning, we wanted a way to identify who was in the car. We thought that was really important information for us, but we also saw that there was an awful lot we could do if we knew who was in the car. So we started out very initially using barcodes on helmets, and we had somebody at pit out scan the barcode on a helmet, but it pretty quickly proved that it was not a great system. So we developed our own RFID system in-house. So every helmet has an RFID sticker on it, and every windshield has an RFID sticker on it. And when they come into the pits and when they go out of the pits, they roll in underneath RFID antennas, and they're like easy pass. They read the car and the driver. They give us a timestamp, and allows us to do all sorts of cool stuff. We use it for pit timing. We use it for keeping track of laps of who's in the car, of penalties. We use it for all sorts of cool stuff. So that's been a really great investment we made, and we use it. I mean, people really like it. You see you look on Race Monitor, you look on Race Monitor or Race Hero. Actually, we use Race Hero. You see who's in the car, and you look at our system, you can see who's in the car, and you can get everybody's lap times based on driver. So that's a pretty cool thing we do.
Speaking of cool tech systems, it was our first time ever using the flagger system, and we, universally liked it. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I met those guys at PRI a bunch of years ago when they were the very early stages of development. They had a little side room, little conference room on the side. They weren't on the floor at PRI, and I talked to them and gave them some advice and my thoughts. And a couple of years later, I saw them again on the floor, and they had a mostly done product. And we were somewhat involved in. Well, I'm not want to say we were involved in development, but they kept us abreast of how they were developing it, and we were really comfortable with or confident that it worked well. And we did a test with the system at one of our races a couple of years ago, and it worked really, really well. And they've been super responsive to our thoughts about development, and we think it's just a great system. It works really well, and there's an awful lot of capability built into it that they're going to roll out in the future.
So luckily, we didn't get a black flag. That's one of the few things we did well that weekend. We kind of stayed out of your hair a little bit. But if the black flag is for a particular car, does the car number pop up? Because we heard yes or no.
In the car, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I mean, because we can send messages to specific cars, so it doesn't need to have the car number. If it shows a black flag for you, it's for you.
Okay.
A black flag all, it would be a separate flag. It'll say black flag all. I can't remember what they look like. There's
Okay.
pictures of what the individual ones look like, but if it's for you, you're going to see a black flag specifically for you.
So we're rooting not to ever see that. So personally,
Right.
that's the goal. And the other thing was some people were asking us in the paddock, and we didn't know an answer, so we figured we talk about it in the podcast as well. Is there a way for the teams to use the flaggers as a backup communication to the car, or is that only through AER?
The teams can't do it yet. And I'm not sure if that's something they want to do or not. We can communicate directly to the cars. We can send them messages. And actually the screen is a touch screen on it. So you can respond with like yes or you can't yet, but you will be able to respond with yes or no's. Like if the car goes off the track, you can message the car and say, do you need an ambulance? Are you okay? The driver can hit yes or no. I think they're reluctant to add some things like that because of the bandwidth of the mesh network that the system is on.
Sure.
If they gave you the ability to message your car, everybody would be messaging their car, and it might choke the system. So I'm not sure if they're going to roll that out or not. There's certainly a capability, but like I said, I'm not sure if they want to add that.
Well, it's probably a future gradual thing. It's kind of like when we used to play on the internet, we used to hear the squeak, squeak, squawk, squawk to dial up, and now we're streaming video. So maybe as the networks get better, it'll be more and more. So it was really nice, and we enjoyed not seeing that it was double yellow, but one of the long double yellows, you sent out a message saying, we're guessing about 10 minutes until track is clear, and it was just good information to have, and let the driver know what was going on a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the early frustrations of doing this was communication. So we're always trying to figure out the best way to communicate with people, and be able to communicate in the cars is really great. Just outside of the cars, we have an SMS system, so we can send an SMS text to everybody at the event, or everybody on a team, or to a specific driver. So we use that a lot, and it's just great to be able to communicate with people like that.
Mm-hmm. We saw a couple on the weekend where it was the one car was looking for something in terms of a spare part, and always helpful because we tend to drive similar cars or similarly prepped cars, so somebody's got it somewhere usually.
Yep, that's really nice to be able to do.
So, what about coverage and ways to follow the series during the race weekends? Do you have anything like that set up?
Well, there's you can follow the timing and scoring live on Race Hero. We also have so let's see. So if you go to, we have an event dashboard that has links to all sorts of stuff. It's AER.AF/race during each event. It's an event dashboard, and there's links to a bunch of event related stuff. Mainly the most interesting thing would be the stints and stops page for that particular race. For each race, we generate a mobile web page. We call it the stints and stops page that lists all the cars that are racing. You can click on a car and see the picture of it and who's in it. And you can get lap times for all the drivers and see how many stops they've done and when they did stops and stuff like that. So that's not exactly real time, but it's all the data from the race that you can watch during the race or follow during the race.
Do you have any thoughts on or plans for live streaming in the future?
We've done some of that. I'm skeptical about the value of that. Watching streams from cars for 8 hours. We've tried that, but I just don't know how compelling content that is for people. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of gone in different ways, things like that, trying to do more shorter updates than just a long stream.
Yeah. Well, we tend to go way long. So if you need people who can babble on for 8 or 9 hours a day, we know a podcast that, we've got that capability. It feels like sometimes more than that.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't completely discounted the idea, but what I've seen so far, the capabilities so far, just doesn't seem all that compelling. It's hard to get people to watch the 24-hour Rolex race. So
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
watch
True.
a static cam on the side of an amateur racetrack, I
Mhm.
just don't know how many people are going to tune in for that.
Yeah, even like Grid Life, when they do it, it's usually shorter stint type races, not the big endurance races. So,
Right. I mean,
yeah.
I think a better way to do that, which we haven't really figured out yet, would be to do, maybe hourly updates or something. Push, an hourly live post about what went on the last hour and talked about it and talk to some people. So it's like smaller chunks than just trying to have a very long stream.
That would be fun. That would be fun. So, John, we were notified as we were signing up for our first ever AER race that you have a special bonus for any first time teams that you may want to make sure everybody's aware of.
Yeah, that's right. So, we had a campaign this year. We were calling the first ones on the house. And it's because we're so confident that if people race with us, they're going to come back. So we're giving any genuinely new team, new drivers, a new car to us, a new team, we're giving them their first race for free. So if they want to try AER, we'll give you your first registration for free, and we're confident that you're going to come back. So it doesn't cost us anything to give somebody a free race. The track is paid for, so we're confident we're gonna get people back. So if anybody's interested in trying out AER, go to our page, AmericanEnduranceRacing.com, and the contact page, and you can find my email address and email me, and we'll try to hook you up.
Mm-hmm. So since you basically started this, do you have kind of the prototypical target for the series in terms of the teams, the drivers, the cars, the tracks you go to, any of those, to give people a flavor for what they might be associated with when they're out there for a weekend if they haven't been already?
Not really. I mean, short answer is no. I mean, I think the teams that we think would fit well are teams that have some wheel-to-wheel experience. They want higher quality of competition. They want a little bit of freedom with the cars they build. So it can be from experienced grassroots teams to a lot of amateur racers, a lot of club racers who want to do endurance racing, race with us, to pro and semi-pro teams. So it's kind of a big spectrum on one end to the other. It's kind of funny. Both sides, both sides of that field. What was I going to say? They kind of look at the other side. So the people with that raced with lemons and champ cars see the really nice BMW M4 and think, oh, I can't go race with them. And then the people with the nice BMW M4 see the car that used to race in champ car or a spec Miata, and are like, well, that's not really a series for me. But it really, all those cars fit. So it's really a series for a lot of people.
Okay, so maybe we should do just to give people an expectation level for the series. If we could compare it to the other endurance racing series, I once toyed around with this idea of putting a graph together where the different series were like bars of how competitive they were and how fast the cars were. Your dog does not like my idea. I understand. It's okay.
No.
I'm not the first person to rain on one of my idea parades. But if you were to talk about comparing the typical car, the average car, would it be similar to like a Lucky Dog or a WRL, or how would you? It's hard to do, but
the average car. I mean, honestly, I don't think the average car is in between those, because my impression of WRL cars, it's more pro prepped cars. They're cars that would be at the top end of AER, and the cars that race in Lucky Dog are much similar to Champ Car cars, which are more of the cars on the other end of AER. And we get a lot of cars, much more that are in the middle, E36s, E36 M3s, things like that in the middle, which are kind of not really in either of those series, is kind of the bread and butter in AER. But we have a lot of cars on either end. There's a lot of spec Miatas and spec E30s and guys who race in neon with us who are super competitive. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of cars on both sides.
Okay, so you're kind of somewhere in between with extensions into both ends of that, because WRL is kind of the semi-pro to pro level, and the lower mid-level amateur would be kind of the Lucky Dog Champ Car, things like that.
Yeah,
and you kind of span the others.
I think so. I mean, I think that, well, I'm not as familiar with how Lucky Dog. I'm not as familiar with them, but we certainly require more experience than Champ Car does. I mean, Champ Car comes out and says that you don't need any track experience to race with them. And we certainly don't let people on the racetrack who've never driven on a racetrack before.
So John, the questions that, typically come up with AER that people cite as a reason why, and sometimes, this is the internet, right? Whatever's said on the internet, it's 100% factually based and there's no bias whatsoever. But sometimes,
for sure,
I don't know if you've ever been on one of those, random sites where once in a while people argue about stuff insanely, like what's the best brake pad? But perhaps some of the criticisms we've heard regarding AER lead to the areas of speed creep and speed differential. Is that a fair assessment of the series?
Well, I haven't heard people talk about speed creep in a while. It was a topic that you would hear about. People, in our Facebook group would talk about a while ago. And we looked at lap times. We looked at the fastest cars' lap times for years. And cars got a little faster over the years, but really not very much. But even to address that more, we've capped the fastest cars. So as fast as cars were last year, they're significantly slower this year. So if that was going on, it's not anymore. We capped the top with a power to weight cap of 8.6 to 1. So cars aren't going to be faster than that. Speed differentials, there certainly are. But we think we have a really high quality of racers. People who've raced with all the other racing series tell me all the time that the quality of driving at AER is better than anybody else, by far. People who have raced in other series, people who've gone and tried other things, they've come back to us because they say the quality of racing is just the best. So there are speed differentials, but I think we do our very best to make sure people play nice together.
Right. And, I think the speed differential is one of those rather arbitrary things people discuss. And if you have multiple classes in a series, by definition, you have speed differentials. And it's kind of something you need to either be able to handle or grow into being able to handle if you're doing multi-class, unless you're doing like a spec series where everything's very, very tightly grouped. And even then, sometimes they have run groups with multiple spec series in it. So same thing happens. It's part of racing.
Were you at the new drivers meeting, Bill? Or were you traveling?
I was doing my traveling, so I did not get to go there. Oh wait, no, I did the new drivers meeting before I left. It was you had the one gentleman do basically he addressed proper passing techniques and we always talk about that stuff, about how faster cars and slower cars should try to work together, and it's something we it's the main thing we address, because incidents between cars that are going the same speed are not very common and they're not very serious. It's the cars that are not in the same class that often have trouble. So we really try to do the best we can to give people good advice about that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you did have the cars designated by the color of which they were for the classes, so you could tell, especially when they were in front of you, like that car is 2 classes faster to me, I should not be trying to keep up with him going through the turns, and vice versa. It was harder when they were behind you just because it's harder to see, but it was helpful.
We encourage people who aren't in the same class not to race each other.
Yeah, because sometimes, bad things happen when you're trying to keep up with a car that you just can't keep up with, sir.
Yeah, or, trying to hold off a car that is significantly faster than you, but you think you're racing against them and you're not going to let them by, but they're faster, let them by. So
yes. Well, luckily, a couple of the cars that were significantly faster than us, they stuck out a little bit. So it was like, oh, here they come again. Bye, have fun.
Yep.
So it was a good time though.
So where do you see the AER next 5 to 10 years? You have any plans for the future?
Um, the biggest plan is always trying to get dates at great dates at racetracks, great dates at great racetracks. That's always the big challenge. Like I told somebody who was interviewing me that it's kind of a strange business, because the thing that is most important to racers, the racetrack and the date, is the thing we have the least amount of control over, because the way racetracks rent out their racetrack. So that's something we're always working on, trying to get a better date at a great racetrack. So, I mean, that's for sure is a thing that we want to always get better at, have a better schedule. And then, since those things aren't really under our control, we always, the things that we can control, we try to do our very best at, running events really well, communicating really well, and stuff like that. So those are our main objectives. And also say, we've had success getting fast cars to come to race with AER, but we think that there's a lot of grassroots teams like yourself that would really enjoy racing with us. So that's certainly something we're always trying to do. And by giving the first race for free, we're hoping that's going to work. We have, I think, 15 new teams that are coming to race with us this year because of that. So we're really happy about that. So trying to, show what a good time people can have, battle, people's misconceptions and things like that.
Yep. You're like a drug dealer, John. You give away the first one for free. Yeah, I get it. I'm with
you.
It's a good kind of drug, though.
Racing is a drug.
I know it's good stuff.
That's right. You didn't cut it at all. It was straight. It was hot. Anyway, so do you see any problems or opportunities you see in the near future? That, the thing I always look at is the modern cars are getting really fast, lots of horsepower, and they're getting increasingly hard to work on. Is that going to be a problem for the amateur / semi-pro drivers that you're dealing with?
I really don't know what's going to happen with amateur racing, because of the complexity of cars. What cars are people going to be able to enter in Lemons in 10 years? I mean, I don't know. I really, it's hard to say where that stuff is going. You look at cars that are 10, 15 years old, and the computers make it impossible to turn them into race cars. So
yep.
I really don't know. I don't have a crystal ball about stuff like that. I'm not sure what's going to happen to amateur racing. They stopped making E30s, so eventually we're going to run out of them.
Yeah, especially the way we're going through them right now. Although the pricing is making it so even if you're not out of them, you can't afford to get one. But I do know that if the Volvo that we have is any indication, that will never be a race car, because it's constantly telling us what we're doing wrong. And I'm just like, I'm just driving. Come on, car.
That's funny you said that. I have a 2004 Volvo, and I've been driving with a bunch of warning lights on, and I finally decided I'm going to get them all fixed. So I had my Volvo mechanic change modules, change this, change that, and I just brought it home, and there's no warning lights. It's such a treat.
Ours wants you to stay in the lane unless your blinker's on, and it's constantly, wants to use the radar assisted cruise control. So the guy who's doing 20 miles an hour below the speed limit in front of me is now how fast I'm going, unless I'm paying really, really close attention, which drives me batty.
Yeah.
But it's
we have one of those. We have one of those generation Volvos, but then I have an older one. I have an 04 that has its own issues.
Yeah, I get there. So, is there any topics we didn't cover already, or any breaking news? We're so such hard hitting journalists. We try to pride ourselves on this.
I don't know. I was going to respond. I think Laura was talking about the way we do penalties. So maybe I could explain that for a few minutes.
Sure. Anything we could clarify.
Great.
So when we started doing this, we one of our overriding goals then, and still is that we didn't want to, for lack of better terms, be ball busters and give people a hard time about every little thing. But safety is very important. And when people are putting a lot into racing, a lot of time and effort, and they want consistency and fairness. They don't want somebody to be able to do something and they weren't able to do it, or whatever it was. So we came up with this penalty system thing for the pits and for on track, so that it's just really straightened by the book. So It happens to everybody. Everybody gets the same, hopefully treated the same way, and it's really transparent. Everybody can see it. So we have a list of penalties in the rule book. It's in the back of the rule book that lists like fueling with your visor up, or more than 5 people over the wall, improper gear, backing up under power, like I've heard some teams have done, things like that. And so we assign points to those. And if you reach certain thresholds of points, 10 points, you start getting penalties. You get a stop and go or a stop and hold for 2 minutes, etc. So, and we make it all super transparent. If a team gets penalty points, they get texted. It's shown on the stints and stops page for the event, what points everybody has and what they got them for and stuff like that. So we just felt that instead of teams tattletaling on each other, being upset because this happened to somebody, and we just finally decided it's better to just put it all in writing and make it really transparent. So it's mainly safety stuff, but there's also some discretion. I'm the race director, so I usually have discretion. If there's contact on the racetrack, there's a minimum number of points we can assign for contact, and I look at the video and I say, boy, that was egregious. I'm going to make sure that they come in and sit for a while. So we'll give them extra points and stuff for that.
We did have a couple listener imposed questions. One of them, I'm pretty sure you can just give a website address to. They want to know what your upcoming races were. I was like, really? Okay.
Well, if you go to AmericanEnduranceRacing.com, upcoming races, we're going to be at the Glen in beginning of May 6th, Summit Point, June 3rd, VIR, July 15th, Mid-Ohio, October 21st, and then New Jersey Motorsports Park, November 18th. And that's a special one. That's a 14-hour race because it's after daylight savings time ends. So it gets dark early. So we get plenty of night racing by doing a race then. So that's our 14-hour season ender at NJMP.
How do you deal with the headlights? Is there a prescription that you guys have for too much and too little?
No, I mean, that's a tricky thing. It would be nice if we could come up with a mandate for headlights, but it seems so subjective. If we're going to use a light meter, somebody else is going to use a light meter. We're going to measure things. So right now we're just trying to, we haven't mandated that. I mean, but we may have to in the future. We do. I mean, speaking of night racing, we use the flagger system for that because it makes it really easy to flag in the dark. We use that exclusively at night for flagging.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. I didn't even think about that. I haven't done night racing yet. I'm getting older, so it's harder.
It's also awesome. It's also awesome in the rain because it's as good in the rain. Like when there's, we were at the Glen and there was just a ton of spray and nobody could see anything, but the flagger units in the car go off and everybody can see the flags.
Yeah, it kind of has like a bright burst of LEDs to get your attention just to look at it. And then it gives you the information you need, and it's really quick. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's super fast. I mean, the system is super fast. Under a second from when somebody at a flag station presses a button to when you see it in your car.
Mm-hmm.
So how often do you still hop in a car?
Not.
Ever? Do you miss it?
Yeah, I do. I keep thinking about doing it. My son is starting to race now. I have an 18-year-old son who's racing, but I haven't done it in a while. So I every year I think that maybe this will be the year I get back into a race car, but I haven't.
Is it just sheer exhaustion?
Well,
just no time.
It's tough to race in your own series, right? I
can't race in my own series. I think that's a terrible idea. So I don't want to be out on the racetrack if some shit hits some fan. So, so I really can't do it in AER. And I don't think I could concentrate enough on the racetrack while I was trying to run a race. So, so I don't know. I may get involved in racing somewhere else, but I'm not sure.
So we had another. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if we covered it, but how far does AER go across the U.S.?
We're an East Coast series.
Okay.
We've been as far as the Corvette Museum.
Okay.
And we go to Road Atlanta. That's kind of the limits.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our customers are in the Northeast, so stretching too far beyond that is kind of a tough toe.
So Does your league have a motto, or do you have a motto while running your league? Like a philosophy? Or are you just in survival mode?
Depends on
Neither.
the
I mean,
weekend.
we don't have a motto, but I mean, um, that we're just super customer focused. I mean, if any motto we have amongst people that work for AER is just trying to put on really great events
Mm-hmm.
and just treat people the way we want to be treated. I mean, when we first started doing this, really like year one, somebody came up to me and my partner and said, "Boy, this is so great. You guys like don't give us a hard time and you're nice to us and you're not mean and this is really great." And we looked at each other like, "Really? We're just like being polite to people because you're our customers." And it was caught us off guard that really came across. So I guess we're the nice guys.
Well, could be. So we got another bunch of questions related. When are you coming to blank track? Is there any tracks on the future horizon wish list?
Um, Pro tracks are always really popular. I'd rather not say the tracks we're talking to and trying to get races at, but
That's fair.
the short answer is pro tracks. Those do really well with our customers. Tracks that aren't, our customers are, how should I say this? Lemons and Champ Car teams are that it's not as important to them. I think proximity and date and things like that are more important than the actual track, and our customers are more focused on the actual racetrack. So we're always trying to get dates at pro tracks.
Kind of an event versus a convenience kind of. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because they're generally, experienced racers. They've driven a lot of places, so they want to drive at these bucket list pro tracks.
Mm-hmm. So we got one last listener question, and it was, how does AER deal with car-to-car contact, and can it ever become a zero tolerance culture? We didn't get to talk about that earlier. So,
well, if the flaggers call in contact, or if anybody calls in contact, if a team tells us there was contact and they want it investigated, the incident is under investigation. We request video from both cars. We require all cars to have operating video cameras, so we request video and we investigate it. We try to see what happened, and we penalize cars accordingly. Sometimes we will, like I said, we'll give them points and penalties. We'll tell a driver that they're done for the day. I'll talk to them about what they did wrong. I'll tell them I don't want you in the car today. Go home and think about it. You can drive tomorrow, stuff like that. So I think saying any race series is a no contact race series is unrealistic. People race hard, cars are going to come together, but we do, our very best to make sure that, when it happens, people understand who made the mistake and who's responsible, and, penalize them as best we can. You certainly can't find anybody, but, making sure that they're not going to bang into somebody and win a race, or that people who are dangerous aren't going to continue to race. So, knowing who's in the car and all those things, make it easy to figure out what's going on. So we, go over video regularly and watch stuff in slow motion and watch it from all different angles. I mean, we'll even go as far as getting video from the car that was behind the two cars that have an incident, because sometimes that's the best view. You can really see what's going on. So we even do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, we had a ton of fun. I'm not sure the podcast was as fun as your event at PittRace, but we had so much fun going with you guys, and hopefully we'll be doing it again. We did lose that particular car, but we have another car backup plan, and we're hoping.
What car did you lose?
The car that we had with your event,
Skunk oil.
The black BMW E36 may be Nevermore. It got into an accident with the Armco on the inside of turn 2 at the Lemons race. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. But we've got an E46 that's destined to come out and play with you. So we already have a backup plan.
Yeah, those. I mean, obviously, those are great cars and fit in really well. There's a ton of that's a great car to bring because there's so many of them. There's always a lot of E46 parts.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of parts around.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Captain's Log Supplemental.
Once you start racing, you'll start to know that the more information your driver can have, the better. One of the things that we found is that the Sentinel system allows you to be able to not only get your driver the information that they need, but also be able to share the information with the pit and anybody who's got internet availability. You can integrate your AIM data. You can integrate the driver tag, as in who is the driver in the car. You can also integrate in your standings and who is ahead or behind of you into the dash, as well as be able to see flag statuses in case there's a yellow flag or a red flag or a black flag. Hopefully none of those, but they do happen. This was developed by a fellow racer, former guest, James Candelaria, and he is seeing a lot of people using it in the SCCA, WRL, AER, and we are doing demos at our paddocks whenever we are at the track. It could be at a race or it could be at an HBD. If you're interested and want to come in and see how it is, we can give you a demo. And if you find that it's something that would be helpful to your racing, please use our discount code, which will save you 10% on anything that you buy. And it is creatively GHIT, GHIT for Garage Heroes and Training. So hopefully you will find that the Sentinel system is as useful for your racing as we have found it for ours.
Okay, so the Fast and Furious story time questions are just questions that are usually rapid answer. Maybe not so much in some aspects, but just to get to know you just a little bit better. And Bill's going to start it off.
I am, I guess.
All right,
I was when Vicky says I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. So simple one to start with, get a little flavor. What was your first car and what was the worst car you've ever had?
My first car was a Datsun 200 SX.
That's a fun one.
It might have been the worst car I ever had off the top of my head.
it always seems to be that
Those
way.
Datsuns, are they even around anymore?
Yeah, it's Nissan.
No, I meant like way back when. I don't remember seeing like you see a vintage
Old ones, yeah.
Yeah,
I've never
you see
seen-
like the 1999 Miatas, but I mean, do you ever see a Datsun?
Yeah, well, this was a 70s Datsun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen another one of those. It was nice. It was my first car, but it was a terrible car.
Yeah.
Usually I'd say it's probably 50% of the answers are my first car was a blank and my second car was my worst car was the exact same car. So
Yeah.
don't feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Part of growing up, I guess.
So, what was the one thing that nobody knows about you that would surprise them?
Nobody knows about me.
Or a little nugget. Do you play guitar? Do you go singing in a band on the off?
Do you have 8,000 pounds of comic books in storage? Yeah, just for instance.
I was a commercial photographer.
Oh,
Nice.
there you go.
Uh-oh, got to keep you away from Miss Vicky or I'll be buying photography stuff again.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So when you were growing up, usually there's like some car that we can trace your car guyness to, and it's called the Taproot car. Is there a car you look back on? It could be a model car, it could be a Hot Wheels, it could be a neighbor's car, it could be your family car. Is there a car that got you started being the car guy?
Yeah, my pop had a 69 Porsche 911. So that was like a very early memory of a car, and he had a couple of Porsches, but that one in particular, I specifically remembered how special and unusual it was. We lived in a town in central New York, and I'm sure it was the only Porsche within hundreds of miles. So that has to be it.
Couldn't talk him into that being your first car?
No, I think it was gone by the time I was driving.
Oh no, that's terrible. Okay.
Yeah, it's back then people didn't understand that cars could actually appreciate. So people sold cars.
That would be a couple dollars right now.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. Well, I guess it was that did make that much of an impression on me because I have a 71 911 that I bought 20 years ago.
Oh, perfect.
For $9,000, and now it's not worth $9,000 anymore.
No. I think it's at least 5 digits.
Yeah. Yep.
So everybody's got one. Do you have a car that got away?
A car that got away. Could you? What do you mean by that? A car that got away? A car I wish I didn't get rid of?
Yeah.
You didn't get rid of, or you just didn't pull the trigger and purchase it, or
Well, I don't know if it was ever really in the cards, but I remember when I was in high school, this was early 80s, in the back of Auto Week, somebody was selling a Gullwing Mercedes for, I want to say like under $20,000, like $12,000 or something. And I remember showing it to my father saying, let's buy this. And he was like, nah, who wants one of those?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a similar story with the we had a Ferrari GTO, not the old one, but the 80s version. And I think the guy had it listed for like 25. And it just couldn't get my father to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
We both could have retired on that car.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
So so far, what is your favorite track?
My favorite track to drive or to hold a race at?
How about both?
We'll do both.
I think my favorite track to drive is Road Atlanta. I just think it's fun and scary and challenging and all those things. Holding a race.
Get in trouble with this one, sir. I'm just saying.
Racetracks don't care what I have to say about them. Probably PittRace. PittRace is just such a nice facility, and it's so easy for us to hold races there.
Yeah.
It's laid out so well, and they're so accommodating.
Plenty of room.
Yeah, I would have to say
Nice showers.
Yeah, it's just really easy for us to hold events there, and it's nice. So I would say that's my favorite for holding events.
The new building looks spectacular too, now that it's open.
Yeah, everything is makes it really easy for us there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's a tough one, but no one else asks. So our Jeremy, Hammond, May, Chris, Matt, other.
What's the question?
Top tier hosts.
Top tier hosts. Oh, James May for sure.
James May. Okay. Very well. You'd be amazed how many people go, who? That's the best answer. But
So if you could race a car or drive a daily driver car from any decade, what would you choose? What decade?
Oh, what decade? 80s.
80s.
Yeah.
Got a little nostalgia there?
Well,
high school.
That's the way it works. It's the music and the cars that you liked when you were a teenager in your 20s. So.
Mm-hmm. So Jennifer wasn't able to make it tonight, but her favorite question is, what is your favorite car movie or car from a movie of all time? TV counts too.
Le Mans, it would have to be Porsche 917s.
Mm.
No question. Quick answer.
That was easy. Yeah.
Yeah. That was another thing, like a touchstone moment when I was a kid, like watching those movies and just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So what do you think of any car pretty much put out, would you say is the worst car ever?
Worst car that was ever put out?
Mm-hmm.
Geez.
Like if you could outlaw it from ever coming onto the AER track.
Oh, is it a race car?
No, it doesn't have to be a race car.
Or just even having it drive on there just for laughs. I think somebody raced an Aztec, didn't they?
Probably. I could just see a Yugo pace car. That would be hilarious. But
I don't know. I can't even think of I don't know.
No worries. Okay, so you have a magic power. You are able to resume your driving. You're able to race anywhere you want against a car that you've raced in the past. You just magically, you have like this little claw. It pulls the driver out of the car, and magically you put into that car. It was a car that you either raced against, or was racing now in your series. Is there a car that you'd like to just get behind the wheel for a stint? And if so, what track?
A car I'd like to get behind a stint. Yeah, I'd love to jump in. The Random Vandals guys who race with us have that green and white M4. I'd love to take a stint in that at Road Atlanta.
Road Atlanta? You want to go down turn 12 in that car?
Yes.
Oofa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very well.
I have a feeling it sticks pretty well. So.
Oh, I think it does. I couldn't tell. It passed me so fast that we didn't get a really good chance to judge it.
Yeah.
Miss Vicky?
Last
one.
I know. I'm trying to think of which one is a good one. Let me see. I don't know. Pick one, Bill.
Okay. So back when you were racing, did you have a nemesis turn, one you just couldn't get right, or one you just didn't ever feel comfortable about going, or is it?
Off the top of my head, it would have to be, was it 13 at Watkins Glen? The turn that leads out onto the front straight. Is that 13 or 11?
The right-hander right onto the front straight?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
Like it's 11.
I'm not sure. It's the last one.
Yeah, that corner is always hard. It was always hard because you either hit the wall or you left something on the table. So that was always the hardest turn to get for me to get right there.
There's that one little foot of grass right between the track and the wall. I mean,
that's racetrack.
Pretty much.
That's racing surface.
Pretty much. Yep. Those blue bushes. Hate that place. It's fun though.
Yep.
So in your opinion, how much of racing is learned and how much is natural skill?
I think it's 50-50. I think, I don't think you can learn all of it. I've seen a lot of people who've started racing late in life and they just never developed the feel for cars. So I think there's feel for cars dynamics that you have to develop young, and then the rest you can learn. So I think it's a mix.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there anything that you're currently working on the upcoming racing season that we can finish off with?
Nothing really new. It's early in the season to be doing anything new. We're just trying to put on great events and, get people to come, trying to get the word out. That we're trying to get new teams this year. We're trying to push all those teams that had reservations over the edge by letting them race for free.
Oh, yeah. So, how can everybody keep in contact with you or follow you and your group?
Our biggest community is on Facebook, our Facebook group. So I think it's groups, AmericanEnduranceRacing.com or something. But if you join our Facebook group, that's super active and there's a lot of conversations and a lot of people to talk to. That's definitely the most active community. It's just to join our group on Facebook. And, if you have questions, email me. You can find me on our contact page on our website on AmericanEnduranceRacing.com. Email me or message me on Facebook. All this stuff like that.
Excellent. Well, wanted to thank you for coming on and thank you for holding a great event at PittRace, one of our favorites. And we had a great time. I stayed awake for some of it, not all of it, but that was a self-induced, not your fault. But it was a great series and a great bunch of people out there. We had a wonderful time and everybody seemed to get along and enjoy the weekend. And I've not heard a bad thing about the entire event. So job well done, sir.
Great. I hope to see you guys back this year.
We will. I'm going to drag Vicky and Jen there soon. We'll be there shortly.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, we will.
Well, thanks again for coming on, John. It was great.
Yep. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you, John.